Well, hello there, ladies and gents. Great to see you again, and welcome back to Advance Your Wealth with Homer Smith. I'm Ryan Ruff, your moderator, but as always, we've got Homer standing by. We're going to be jumping into a really unique conversation today, bringing on a former guest back onto the show to dive into the really unique work that they're doing over at the PSBLTY Co. Our recurring guest here today joining us, Chris Smith. Chris is the founder of PSBLTY Co. Chris works alongside and partners with entrepreneurs, brands, teams of all sizes, really, to discover their identity and their purpose. You know, Chris works closely with Homer and his team doing this exact same work, but even more so, Chris works together and finds clarity. They build leadership and culture within the organizations he works with. They align their teams and create substantial growth along the way under kind of a unified message, so that way they're really aligned with what they're doing and who they are in the world. Really excited to welcome Chris back onto the show, tap into the awesome work he's doing with the companies that he's servicing. Of course, Homer and his team being one of those groups. But before we bring Chris on and get into the nitty gritty, let's go ahead and say hi to the man of the hour. Homer, good to see you today. How we doing?
Hey, Ryan, I'm doing really well and just super excited for the conversation today. I work pretty closely with Chris and his team, and can definitely say Chris is one of the most powerful leaders, presenters, and just friends that I've just been lucky enough to be associated with. So just excited to dive in on some of the amazing things I've been seeing from him and his team, and how I think it can help anybody who's watching the show today.
Sure thing. And I mentioned a moment ago, we had Chris, on the show in a prior episode. Those familiar with our content will probably remember it. A lot of great conversations around identity and branding. What was the impetus, Homer, of wanting to have him back on? I know you guys are buddies, of course, but what do we really want to get into from a conversational perspective today?
Yeah, I think in the year or so since we did that podcast, and a lot of the work I was doing with Chris and his team was really focused on our branding as a team and what we're known for. And you've seen it through a lot of our podcasts, and what we're known for, more than anything else is helping extremely successful families and business owners navigate life's most complex, most important, and most challenging transitions. And while Chris did a lot of work helping us really identify what that is, since then we've done a lot more work, not only with the team, but just me individually, around leadership and around possibility, and really diving into what that is and the framing around it. And there's so many things that I've learned from Chris over the last year that have been so impactful to me and our team, that I wanted to make sure that got out there, and to really frame up more of what I'm seeing as the potential for what Chris is doing with us.
Sure thing. Well, with that, hey, we're super excited to welcome him aboard to the show. Chris, welcome, and thanks for joining us on Advance Your Wealth.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm honored to be here with both of you. So I'm stoked.
Yeah. So Chris, as I framed up at the beginning, you obviously know all the work we've been doing together, but I've seen this awesome growth and shift in what you all are doing at the PSBLTY Co. And one thing that's really stuck out to me in the last year and the work that we've done with you is, which I think was what changed the name of the company to PSBLTY, is this whole idea of possibility versus limitation. And it's made such a huge impact on me, again, both personally and with our team and in the business. So I thought it would be great to start is just, I've seen you present this so many times, and you're so powerful at it, and it's made such an impact. But just where did that come from? What you kind of made this, we talked, like, I have this belief around possibility and limitation, and where did that come from, and what is that all about?
Yeah, thank you. There's nothing I love talking about more than possibility. I think I've realized along the way, Homer, just through some of my own personal life challenges and some of the challenges I saw in my family, and having lost a lot of people close to me, that I realized that my personal mission and purpose in life is to speak as much possibility into as many human beings in one lifetime as I can, to help them see that more is possible. And I think all of it really stems from this core belief that I have, that possibility always exists and limitation is always created. And so when you think about that, possibility exists, but limitation is created. What I mean by that is that possibility has always existed, and it always will exist. And there's nothing you or I can do, Homer, to stop possibility from existing as like a universal truth that's available for everyone. Now, you and I could limit possibility for ourselves, but we can't do anything to stop it because it's just always out there and it's always patient. It's always waiting for us. It's always there if we're willing to tap into it and if we're willing to see it. And that's part of the reason why we chose to spell the name of the company, the Possibility Co. We chose to spell it in a very unique way. So it's PSBLTY. And people will sometimes say, like, why didn't you spell it all the way out? And it's because you have to have eyes to see it. Possibility is always there if you're willing to see it, if you're looking for it, if you have eyes to see it. And so the opposite of that, though, is limitation. Like when you look out into the world, there is no limitation until we create it. And we often create it, right here in our own minds and our own thoughts. And as someone who's, I would say, a recovering limitation seeker, I know what it feels like to limit limitation. I know what it feels like to have a lot of limiting beliefs about yourself. I know what it feels like to have a lot of limiting beliefs around your business and your marriage. And I also know what it can start to feel like and what your life can look like when you start to step into possibility more than exist in limitation. And so another kind of deep thought is that you can't create possibility because it already exists. You can just tap into it.
Yeah.
But you can't tap into limitation because it doesn't exist. You can only create it. And like myself, I often see a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of people who they're creating way more limitation than they even need to, than is necessary. And they could just have a much more beautiful life and a more successful business and a better culture if they'd spend more time stepping into possibility than living in limitation.
Yeah, I love that. And there's two different frameworks you've taken us through and that I now use pretty much every day, whether it's trying to keep myself in a framework around a mindset around possibility versus limitation, as well as acknowledging and recognizing others to help them see their possibility. And so I'll ask you around both of them. So one of them is that's been super helpful is that people that live in limitation are always focusing on what's not working and what they don't like and all those sorts of things. So can you really walk through that distinction between limitation and possibility when it comes to that framework?
Yeah. And I hope everyone who listens to this, I hope to save you a lot of time and a lot of money, because I spent a lot of time and a lot of money, 10 years of personal development and transformation and leadership courses and leadership events and, leadership institutes that I was part of for 2 years, and I boiled it down to, if we look for things that we don't want, we create more of what we don't want. And if we look for things that we do want, we create more of what we do want. And it's that simple, and yet it's that challenging at times. And I think our internal hardwiring, and I don't know why this is, I mean, I have some theories about it, but our internal hardwiring as human beings is, it's easier for us to focus on what we don't want, what we don't like, what we don't have, and what isn't working in any area of our life, our marriage, our business, our family, our teams. Our brain naturally kind of looks at what isn't working, what we don't want, what we don't like, and what we don't have. And sometimes I think we think, Homer, that if I can just focus enough on what I don't want and what I don't like, then I'll figure out ways to change it. But you actually never do. You just create more of it. Whereas if I redirect that energy and I spend more time thinking and talking out loud about what I do want, what I do like, what I do have, and what is working, I'll create more of that. And I think inside of us, we have these two voices. I call it the voice of possibility and the voice of limitation. And the voice of possibility, I believe, is the one we were born with, right? We were born with this possibility. Like we were born, I always say we were born belonging, we were born enough, we were born worthy, and we were born mattering. Nothing we had to do to have any of that. We just were. And we were born with this voice of possibility. And then sadly, as we start getting a little bit older, this other voice starts to creep in that was never meant to be part of us, the voice of limitation. And it starts saying things to us like, well, maybe you're not enough. Maybe you don't belong. Maybe you're not worthy. Maybe you don't matter. And then even sadder is, as most of us get older into our late teens, early 20s, that voice of limitation is so loud that all most of us do is we just kind of sit around and listen to this voice of limitation, and we think it's who we are. And we think it's the only voice that's we've ever known. And it's saying things to us all the time like, yeah, you don't matter. You're not enough. You don't belong. You aren't worthy. And that voice of limitation is the thing that has us constantly focusing on and obsessing and talking out loud about what we don't want. And it sounds almost too simple, Homer, but it really is that profound, that if we, and I give this challenge to people all the time, I go, for 1 week, I don't want you to do anything else but this. For 1 week, anytime you find yourself thinking or talking about what you don't want, do the best you can to catch it, and then in the moment, rechannel it to what you do want. And just do that one exercise for a week, and just see what you notice about your life. See what you notice about your relationship. See what you notice about just your overall feeling. And so focusing on what you do want, that's stepping into possibility. Focusing on what you do want is actually creating more, or what you don't want is creating more limitation.
And and it sounds too simple, but I can attest, seeing it in our team and in my own personal life. I mean, it's amazing the time that's being saved on our team through working with you and really focusing on possibility versus limitation. We have rules now in the team and values around, no drama and no complaining. And our team can attest to how many hours they save in a week by getting rid of the focus on what's not working and what they don't like, and quickly reframing it into, okay, what is working and how do we move forward? I think that's super powerful. And the second framing was that really important part, I think, around, that we're all born worthy and enough. And I think that is the way I kind of have been using that in particular, not even so much with myself, but with others, is I think a lot of people, to your point, have that voice speaking to them constantly that they aren't worthy, they're not enough, they don't belong. And they, number one, hopefully they can figure out themselves that they are, but they need other people to speak possibility into them. So I'm really trying to, when I recognize them doing something, to remind them of those things. And I know there's a number of stories that you have around it. I mean, you can talk about the people who had challenging fathers growing up, and so I don't ever want to marry someone like my father, and so they just focus on things they don't want, right? And then they end up marrying somebody just like their father because that's all they focused about. But you had a story in one of our recent conversations around a basketball team that you went and watched and you're coming to speak to, and just watching the shift from getting to think about possibility versus limitation and the change and how that changed the results they were getting. You want to tell that story? I think that's just such a neat way to frame it as well.
Yeah, and I want to touch on something real quick too, to finish that thought about, the implications and the cost to us if we start believing the lie that I don't matter, I'm not enough, I don't belong, I'm not worthy. Not only does it not feel good, there's some real implications of that. It causes us to do things that don't serve us, from personal experience. Because look, if I don't feel like I'm enough, if I don't feel like I matter, if I don't feel like I'm worthy, if I don't feel like I belong, then a lot of people, especially high performers, business owners, entrepreneurs, they're then going to be compelled to go try and do enough and achieve enough to finally feel that.
Yeah.
And then the most discouraging part is you go do and you go achieve, and you're almost like, wait, I feel the exact same. I still don't feel like I'm enough. I still don't feel like I'm worthy. I still don't feel like I belong. I still don't feel like I'm enough. In fact, you find you feel worse because it's like, well, no, when I got enough money in the bank account, or when I grew my revenue to this point, or when I got the car or the home or the partner, this was supposed to be different. And because the reality is, it's not out there. What you're seeking is actually something that's always been inside of you. Like, you can't find belonging or worthiness or enoughness or mattering out there, because it's already in you. You were born with it. You've always had it. I always say it's an inside job. And so and I'm not saying don't go pursue success and don't grow. And I mean, I think there's a lot of usefulness in that. It's just, it is the reason that you're driving towards success because you feel like there's something missing and you think it's out there? Or is it like, no, I'm really fulfilled where I'm at now. I'm willing to embrace that I matter, that I belong, that I'm enough, that I'm worthy. And I'm just continuing to pursue what's possible because it's a blessing to me and a blessing to others. And so again, stepping into that possibility of what you do want and what is working. So I was asked to come in and run a couple drills with my son's junior varsity basketball team this past year. He's a freshman, played on the freshman and JV team. And I got there early and I just observed. They were doing this layup drill it was more than just a basic layup drill. There was 3 people involved. You had to pass it, run really fast or behind the person you passed it to. Then they would pass it, run behind. So you did this full court, and then the final person would, make a layup. And they had to do 10 in a row where they didn't drop the ball on the passes, and then they finished the layup. Took them like 20 something times. Now it's a little bit involved, but I'm like, okay, at the JV level, it shouldn't take 20 something times to make 10 layups in a row. I mean, we're talking about layups here. And I had a thought, right, of what was causing this. And so the coaches, introduced me, have me come out, and they're like, hey, Chris is going to run us through some drills. And I said, hey, before we do that, I'm just curious. I just observed you, try to make 10 layups in a row, and it took you 20 something times, right? And I was kind of giving them a hard time because my son's on the team. I'm like, kind of pathetic, guys. You can't make a layup. And they're, kind of laughing. And I said, but be honest with me. What was going through every single one of your minds throughout that drill? And every single kid was like, oh, I'm thinking don't miss. I'm thinking don't make a bad pass. And I was like, so you were actually thinking about what you didn't want to have happen? And they were like, well, yeah, of course. Like they kind of looked at me like I was an idiot. They're like, yeah, of course I'm thinking about what I don't want to have happen. And I was like, and what kept happening? And I could see some kind of light bulbs going on. And they're like, well, we kept having what we didn't want to have happen. And I said, so what's interesting is, what if instead you would have thought, I'm going to make the pass. I'm going to make the layup. What if you thought about what you did want? And some of them were like, well, what's the big difference between thinking about what you don't want and what you do want? I said, everything. You don't think there's any difference between thinking about what you don't want and what you do, but it's everything, because one has you focusing on limitation and one has you thinking about possibility. And there's been studies done on this, right? Like Homer's mentioning, where they'll find some one in particular I remember reading was about this. They'd found some women who at certain points in their marriage were either really unhappy or had been divorced. And they said that they grew up their entire lives saying things like, I'll never marry someone like my dad. I don't want to marry someone like my dad. And then they ended up marrying someone just like their dad. Because you think if you say enough out loud what you don't want, you're going to get the opposite, but you actually get exactly what you don't want. So I said, before we get to my drill, are you guys open to a little experiment? And they were like, sure. I was like, why don't you run the drill again? And this time, let's all get into an agreement. The only thing you're going to think about is what you do want. Making the pass, making the layup. And I think, they did it in like 3 tries as opposed to like 20 something. And their minds were blown, but it's like, again, it's that, and let's put this in the context of a company. Let's say that meetings are starting late consistently. And obviously that doesn't work for a variety of reasons. And all companies seem to face this challenge at some point in time. There's some usefulness in talking about what isn't working initially. Hey, we're starting meetings too often. We're starting meetings late. That's about the extent of the usefulness of talking about that. Let's put all the rest of our energy into what we do want, which is starting meetings on time. And let's actually talk about the solutions and what we can create as a possibility to have that change. Because here's what's so fascinating. Again, we think that if we just complain enough in the meeting and get after people enough and like, we got to stop having meetings start late, that's going to change anything. But it doesn't take you into any solution. It just takes you further down the rabbit hole of complaining and talking about what you don't want. The minute you shift your energy, I found too, Homer, to what you do want, you also get into creative like problem solving. And you talk about, and so another way of saying it, when you focus on what you don't want, it brings up more problems. When you focus on what you do want, you start to talk about solutions.
Yeah. I mean, I know I've heard you speak about this a number of times, but every single time I love hearing this, because again, I've gotten the benefit of seeing it direct in our team and some of the transformations that have happened of shifting that focus from what's not working, and even myself personally. So, another kind of around the possibility of like leaders lead, right. And creating leaders in our team. And as we've grown a lot in the last year, we had actually, while we were having the best success as a business that we've ever had, we were having some of the worst outcomes from a culture standpoint within the team. And part of the block for me, even though I was getting good coaching, but not always implementing everything, was, I'm in the world of being a financial advisor, wealth manager to very successful families. I was like, well, that's just what I do. I advise, and everyone just has to follow along, like in like leadership, like, yeah, like they just watch me and that should be enough. And just really recognizing and taking responsibility that like, no, leaders lead. And that, one of your definitions of leadership is, challenging others more than ever been challenged, but supporting them more than ever been supported. And I was really good at the challenging part. Like I definitely challenge them. And again, we were having amazing success working with really complex situations. But I realized the way I was leading was just not being supportive and focusing. And a lot of the only things I would ever be doing was telling them what's not working.
Mm.
Like, hey, I'm kind of a perfectionist. I expect you to deliver great results. So when you deliver great results, like, well, yeah, I expected that. So like, why would I need to tell you what's working? I only ended up telling them what wasn't working, and obviously recognize that that wasn't the right path. And can just attest again to my personal experience of this, that speaking possibility into the team, talking about what's working and what we want, where we want to go versus what isn't working and all the challenges, it in the last 6 months has been just a meteoric shift in the culture, the energy, the efficiency we're getting as a team. It's amazing.
Well, and I want to acknowledge you for that, Homer, because and look, I'm not just saying this because I'm on a podcast with Homer. I have never had a client, and we collectively at the Possibility Co have coached thousands of clients at this point, that has ever been as committed to doing the work as Homer. And that's another lesson in leadership, and this idea of stepping into possibility is, how hungry are we for growth? How hungry are we to continue stepping into possibility? Because we kind of call it possibility mountain. It's a mountain with no top, right? Like, we're never going to get to the top, but we'll just keep getting higher up the mountain. And the higher up we go, the more clear the view, the greater our perspective, right? The more clear the air, the more we can help other people up. So it's like, it's a mountain with no top, not in a discouraging way. It's like, I just want to keep climbing the mountain. And that to me has been my experience of you, Homer, is that like, you're always willing to grow. You're always willing to learn. You're always willing to pursue more of what's possible, which is a really beautiful quality to have. And it's a beautiful thing to instill in your culture. Imagine what's possible if the majority of your organization is also, hey, I'm going to keep climbing the mountain. Like, it's a mountain with no top. I just want to continue to level up. I just want to continue to see, more of what's possible. And so you've been, it's funny. None of you would know this listening to this recording, but just yesterday I gave Homer an idea of adding one single word to his what he's known for statement, and he did it today. Like, that's another thing I've realized about people who are pursuing what's possible or interested in stepping into possibility. They also don't wait very long to step into it. They don't wait very long, to implement it. So it's been really beautiful to also just observe and watch. And one thing I'll just say that's kind of interesting, if you want to test this in real time, like I shared with you the challenge, just for 1 week, do it yourself, right? Try to pay attention to how many times you find yourself thinking or talking about what you don't want, and shift it. And also, if you ever have someone, a partner, a spouse, child, team member, who comes to you in a conversation and is complaining about what they don't want, what they don't like, I think there's a lot of wisdom in giving them space to share so that they really feel heard and seen and understood. And then at some point in time, when you feel like it's appropriate, you can interject, and you can literally, in the moment, and they don't even realize it's happening, shift them off of that thinking and complaining and worrying about what they don't want or don't like or what isn't working. And you can like just, hey, well, thank you for sharing that with me. What do you want? Or, hey, thank you for sharing that with me. What is working? Or, hey, thank you for sharing that with me. What do you want to create here? You literally, you'll see them and they'll just go right into, so they'll have come in bound and determined without even knowing it to talk about limitation, and not even realizing that they're just talking themselves further into the pit of limitation and creating more of what they don't want. And you let them do it, let them feel seen, let them feel heard, because you genuinely want to do that. And you just like shift them.
Yeah.
It's miraculous.
And I again can attest to this. I have a 12-year-old, and if any of you on the pod, watching the pod, have a 12-year-old or a teenager or a grandkid, they'd very easily get into the world of limitation. Unfortunately, that's the age where they get told a lot about what they can't do and shouldn't have and shouldn't like, all that sort of thing. And my daughter had come home and was complaining about a rough day at school or certain people at school. To your point, let her kind of get through her rant, and then just said, yeah, well, it's a lot of stuff that's not working. And, but what is working? And to your point, I mean, it just like this 180-degree shift. And she just immediately thought of all the things that are working, and just you could just tell her, just her whole spirit lifted and her whole attitude changed. It was pretty amazing to see. So still in practice, I got a lot of work to do myself and all this, but so Chris, as we wrap up on this has been powerful. I'm excited that others are going to get more, hear more about what you're doing. And I'm just excited to see where you're going. For those of you watching, we're going to look back, I think, in 5 years and be like, wow, we got to see Chris on Homer's podcast before he was like the next Tony Robbins. And I really do believe in the message that Chris has is going to get out there to the world, and he's going to be everywhere. And so I just want to thank you for what you've done for me and for our team. But too, as you wrap up, any final comments on this idea of possibility and what you would want people to take away from the pod today?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you, Homer. And I feel the same way about you. I tell Homer, I was like, hey, whether you want to or life, we're going to do life and business together for the rest of our lives. So I think he's my long lost brother with the last name Smith. It's the core message that I want to share with everyone, that I do share with everyone, no matter what age they are. And that is, I just want you to know, like, you really do matter. You really are enough. You really are worthy, and you really do belong. You were born that way. And that's always been a part of you. And you can like reclaim that and start to feel that again. And I would just encourage you, just tap into the possibility that's always around you. Possibility exists, limitation is created. And the simplest way of saying it is just make it a goal and make it a focus to spend as much of your life thinking and talking out loud about what you do want. Because every time you do, you step a little bit more into possibility. And the beautiful thing about that is the more you step into possibility without even recognizing it, you become kind of this life force of possibility that starts to spread out to others. So in you stepping into what's possible, everyone around you is going to win. When you live in limitation, no one around you wins. So yeah, you matter, you're enough. And I just encourage you to step into possibility and really focus on what you do want in life.
I mean, I love it. Always love it. Chris, if people want to find out more about PSBLTY Co and more about the amazing work you guys are doing, what's the best way for people to find that?
Yeah, I tell people, like, look, I'm really committed on my Instagram I put out messages that I think will really make a difference for people. I put out consistent content that is designed to help people step into possibility. So on Instagram, you can find me. My username is Chris Carter Smith. And then a little bit about our company is PSBLTY.com.
Perfect. Well, hey, Chris, really appreciate you carving some time out of your busy day to be with us. And maybe we'll have to have you back on down the road, check in and hear about some of the great work you're doing out there.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. It was an honor.
Of course. And hey, folks, we're going to take a final moment, as we always do. Thank you all for stopping by and spending time with us. If you enjoyed today's discussion with Chris and Homer, you learned a thing or two. I know I did. Make sure you go ahead and subscribe to the show, that is, on whichever platform you checked us out on today, so that you don't miss out on any other great content that we bring to you, with some conversations on guest experts or diving deep into some wealth management topics, as Homer and I do from time to time. Before Chris and Homer, I'm Ryan. We're going to go ahead and say so long now, but we appreciate you stopping by and being with us on Advance Your Wealth.